And we are live. Good morning and welcome to Daf Yomi. To the thousands watching live on Zoom, to the millions watching on YouTube. Welcome everybody this morning as we start page 121, Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph. Very exciting page for you guys today, as they all are, of course. We are going to be talking about our level of responsibility in a situation where, God forbid, someone's property was on fire and a non-Jewish person or a child comes to put out the fire. What is our level of responsibility to stop them from doing so? So that's what we're going to cover at the beginning over here. We are going to be talking about, in the Mishnah, 3 cases where you can move a kli to cover something on Shabbos. We're going to be talking about killing dangerous creatures on Shabbos. We're going to be talking about 3 statements by Abba Bar Kahana regarding Rebbe and his household. So without further ado, let's get it up on the screen for you all to see here. If you're using your own Gemara, as I said, we're on page 121. And let's get cracking. We're going to pick it up a few lines down at the top of the page. At the first Mishnah there. So if you haven't done those few lines before that, then you'll want to take an opportunity to do that. But we will pick it up at the beginning of this Mishnah because it will take us over to the next page and a little bit more than that. And we're basically going to do 2 whole pieces of Mishnah and Gemara today. So it's quite tidy to keep it all packed in. So here we go. Says the Mishnah. Nachri Shabbat Lichbos. If a non-Jewish person comes to extinguish your fire on Shabbos, what is your level of responsibility in that? So the Mishnah says, Ein omrim lo kabei va'al techabei. You do not say to him, please come and extinguish my fire. We can't ask a non-Jewish person to do malacha on our behalf, but you do not need to say to him, va'al techabei. You do not need to say, please don't extinguish this. You're not allowed to put this out. So it seems that there's a little bit of flexibility like that. If a non-Jewish person was to come and do it of their own accord, we would not need to stop them from doing so. And the reason for that is, says the Mishnah, because their rest is not on our heads. It is not our responsibility to make sure that non-Jewish people rest on Shabbos. Yeah, we're not allowed to ask them to do things for us, but if they were to do something through their own intuition, then we would not need to stop them. Continues the Mishnah, Aval katan sheba lichbos, but if your child was to come, actually, that was a bit early to say your child, but a child who comes to put out the fire, says the Mishnah, Ein shomin lo, then we should not listen to him, meaning that we should put a stop to him. Why? Says the Mishnah, because their resting on Shabbos does fall on our shoulders. More on that as we come to the Mishnah. When I say the Mishnah, I really mean the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami says, Bidleika hitiru lomar kol hamachaber eino mafsid. When it comes to a fire, the rabbis actually permit people to say that anyone who extinguishes this will not lose out, meaning you're not asking people to put the fire out, but you are alluding to some sense of reward if they were to come and put the fire out. So if you say anyone who comes and puts this fire out will not lose out, then you've not asked people to do it explicitly, but they will come and do it because they appreciate that there's something in it for them. Says the Gemara, name a Messiah, let's say that this is support for the following statement. As we've seen in the Mishnah, it says that a non-Jew who comes to put out a fire, you don't say to him, put it out, and you also don't need to say, stop putting it out, because their resting on Shabbos does not fall on you. Kabe, who de lo amrina le. To say explicitly the words, extinguish this, you're not allowed to say. But says the Gemara, ha But if you were to say anyone who puts this out is not going to lose out, that you are allowed to say. But hang on a minute, says the Gemara. Ema Seifa al Tchabe. But the end of the Mishnah said, do not extinguish. Lo amrinan lei. We're not allowed to say that to him. But you're also not allowed to say that anyone who puts it out doesn't lose out. We also do not say to them. So therefore, the Gemara concludes, rather, we can't really prove from our Mishnah which way it is. Tana Rabbanan, says the Baraisa, there was a story that it very much happened to Yosef ben Simai b'Shichin, in a place called Shichin, that his courtyard caught fire. Ubaru anshe gister ashod sipori, and the fire department, the government officials, or the men came, as it says over there, from the government of Sipori, translates it there from the fortress of Sipori, but they were coming lechabos, to put out the fire. Because he, Yosef ben Simai, was a steward, was a treasurer of the king. So it seems that back in this time, the fire department would only come if you were someone important. There you go. Thankfully, things have moved on a little bit. But anyway, so this non-Jewish troop of fire workers came to put out the fire. But Yosef ben Simai did not allow them to, because of the need to honor the Shabbos. But thank God, a miracle happened for him. And the rain fell and put out the fire. After Shabbos that night, he sent gifts to each of these firemen, and he sent 2 slayin as a reward for having tried, at least, to come and put the fire out, even if they hadn't done it, because he had stopped them. And to the chief of the department, Shebahen Chamishim, he gave 50. So it seems that he gave some reward, even though they hadn't done anything, but they had come. So that plays into what we were saying before, that anybody who comes to extinguish it will not lose out. When the Chachamim heard about what had happened, they said, Amru, Lo he didn't need to have done this. He didn't need to tell them to stop, because we've learned that if a non-Jewish person comes to extinguish his fire on Shabbos, you don't say to him, please come and do it, but you also do not need to say to them to stop. So actually, he could have allowed the non-Jewish people to put it out. Nonetheless, thank God there was a miracle, and the rain came to put the fire out in any event. Continues with a quote from the Mishnah about Katan Sheba Lichvos Ein Shomin Lo Mipnei Shevisasa Aleihem. But a child who comes to extinguish the fire, then we are supposed to stop them, because their resting on Shabbos does fall under our jurisdiction. Shemas Mina, we conclude from here, Katan Ochel Nevelus, based in Mitzavin Alav La'afrisha, that if there was a katan, if there was a child who was eating an animal carcass, then the Beis Din, assuming that the parents were not interfering, then the Beis Din would be commanded to step in and stop this child from eating these animal carcasses. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Bekatan ha'osem das aviv, that when it comes to a child acting in accordance with his father's wishes, when it comes to a child trying to fulfill the will of his father, then if that's something bad, then the Beis Din would need to stop them. But when it comes to a non-Jewish person who is acting for the sake of a Jewish person, do we permit that? Meaning, we are not supposed to allow a non-Jew to do actions for us on Shabbos that we could benefit from. So why then are we allowed to benefit from a non-Jewish person putting out our fire if it's that for our benefit? And so the Gemara answers, Nachri ladate denafshe avid, that the non-Jewish person is actually doing it on his own, for his own reasons. He realizes that there's going to be some reward, and so one cannot say that he is exclusively doing it for the sake of the Jewish person. Rather, we are saying that because there is some benefit, he does have a bit of a vested interest to put out the fire and get some reward. And therefore, we do not say, therefore, that the non-Jewish person is doing this for the explicit reason of providing benefits to the Jewish person. But when it comes to a child, if they are doing this because they think that this is what the father wants, then it could be that there is a problem with the child doing this thing. Question is, if it was not your child, if it was just if it was just a Jewish child, not over the age of bar mitzvah, who instinctively goes and puts out the fire, maybe you wouldn't need to stop them. But if it's your child and they're doing it because they think that you would be expecting them to, then yes, that could be a problem to have them do that, and that's why we are not supposed to allow them to continue. We continue unless we have some questions. Okay, then you're muted.
Well, I don't know if it is worth, but this concept of having what is Shabbat goy.
Yeah.
I don't know how this relates to this. I don't know if the Gemara even covers that at some point. But does it cover it?
We cover Amira La'akum. We cover the instructing non-Jewish people. And yeah, this does get explored again. Broadly speaking, it is a difficult topic to navigate, and sometimes the answers surprise us. Yeah.
There is a financial reward for that, I would imagine.
Right.
Which is different to here. Here's, here it's saying that this should not be a financial reward in doing this. They should do it because they want to do it.
No, here we're saying that they are keenly aware that there will likely be a financial reward. We can't say, I'm going to give you 50 quid if you put out my fire. But if we say anyone who does this will not lose out, meaning I've got you covered, I will find some way to repay you, but you're not explicitly expressing that the Gemara is saying that we'd be allowed to do.
Okay, so I heard that the Gemara is saying that one should not offer some kind of financial reward because then they're not doing it off their own back, and the purpose is that they would do it off their own back. Unless I misunderstood what you're saying. No,
I think we're along the same track. Could be you're just explaining things better than I am.
Okay.
From what I can tell here, you're right. We're not promising a financial reward, and we're not paying them to be able to do it, but we're giving them enough of an incentive to do it without clearly stating what that incentive is. So I think it's the same kind of thing. We don't want people to do it because they think they are doing it for the Jewish person's sake or because the Jewish person has asked them to do it, but they are doing it because they see an incentive in doing it. But the beginning of the mission was saying that if a non-Jewish person came of their own volition to put it out, we wouldn't need to stop them. That is what we were saying. But if no one was coming, then we could say that they won't lose out.
Yeah. What's interesting is that this is the examples that have been used for quite some days now is about putting out fire on Shabbat, which is obviously quite an extreme. It may be been a regular occurrence back in the day, but to save life or to save property, that's it. Asking one to whatever to turn on on your lights. It's not the same. It doesn't seem the same magnitude as putting out a fire and stop someone's house burning down.
That's correct.
So they constantly use this example of a fire burning down, which is it's a life-changing event for people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that was along the lines of what I was going to ask, because I thought the sanctity of life comes sort of above everything.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is not sanctity of life. What we're talking about here is attitude towards possessions. So when it comes to sanctity of life, we have an imperative to protect life, whatever the cost, whatever Sabbath violations might be entailed. To save a life, one has to do that. When it comes to saving property, so there we are at variance a little bit. And the measures that the Mishnah prescribes and Halacha prescribes is there so that we understand to not get too attached to material possessions, but nonetheless takes into account and reflects the fact that people will want to save material possessions. So I can't remember if we've done the Mishnah about saving clothes and saving food for 3 meals and all of that. It's definitely around here somewhere. But the premise of saving things to within a certain threshold is because we understand that human nature will be that they want to save as much as they can. And so we have to try and find a permissible way for them to be able to do that without violating or without delegitimizing the importance of Shabbos. Just 1 second, everybody, if you don't mind. Kids, can you close the door, please? You're being a bit loud. Thank you. So yeah, that's broadly the perspective and the background for this. And this actually came up recently when we think about the types of consequences there are for violating Shabbos. One could say it's an extremely strict punishment for someone that does this on purpose, because it would have carried the death penalty back in the day. So one can look at this and say, gosh, that's an extremely strict result for somebody that decides to willfully desecrate Shabbos. And on the other hand, you can look at it as, well, that's how important Shabbos is. That is not to be taken so lightly. And therefore, for being able to appreciate all of these things, then there needs to be a little bit of a paradigm shift as to appreciating how important the concept, the mitzvah, the day of Shabbos is, with regards to then understanding why the laws are set up in the way that they are. But hopefully, it's an ongoing journey. Amir La'akum, speaking to non-Jewish people and having them do malacha for you, does appear again. So let's see how it transpires. Let's continue for now, though, with the Mishnah 7 lines up from the bottom of the page and following inside on the screen. Let's just check I'm in the right place. There we go. Okay. So the Mishnah says as follows: Kofin ka'ara al gabe haner b'shvil shelo te'echos b'kora. You are allowed to put a bowl or a dish on top of a lamp, on top of a candle, assuming that you won't put out the fire, because we're not allowed to extinguish the fire, but you're allowed to cover it in a way that would prevent it from ever having the rest of the house catch fire. So if you were afraid that the ceiling beam above this candle, for whatever reason, would catch fire, so then you're allowed to cover the candle so that it doesn't. Similarly, says the Mishnah, you are allowed to use a bowl to cover to cover the excrement of a child, of a katan. And you are allowed to cover a scorpion in order that it should not bite or sting. Rabbi Yehuda says, it seems that it happened to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai when he was living in Arav. He was living in Arav and he saw somebody cover a scorpion with a bowl. And he said, I'm concerned that he might be liable to bring a sin offering because he might have violated the melacha of tzad, of trapping, by doing what he did. And the reason for that would seem to be that it could be that this scorpion wasn't really chasing or trying to attack anybody, and so the unnecessary covering of the scorpion in Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's eyes might have been problematic. But we will see more on that very, very shortly. Starts the Gemara, 3 lines up from the bottom of the page if you're following inside. Rav Yehuda, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Rav Chanan bar Rava. We had 3 rabbis. There was Rav Yehuda, there was Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, and there was Rav Chanan bar Rava. And they all went, Iklu lebe Avin de Nishikia. They all went to visit Avin in Nishikia. Rav Yehuda, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, to Rav Yehuda and Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Aisu lahu paraisa. They brought chairs for them to sit on. Avin, what's his name, Avin? Avin brought a chair or a bed for them to be able to sit on. But for the Rav Chanan bar Rava, lo aisule. But for Rav Chanan bar Rava, he did not bring a chair for him, and as a result of that, he had to sit on the floor. And as we'll see from the Gemara, he was a little bit disgruntled by this. Ashkechei masne le levarei ba'al tzoach shel katan mipnei katan. They arrived at a time when Rav Abin was teaching his son the Mishnah, what we've been learning just now. That for that you're allowed to cover the excrement of a child because you don't want the child to be able to play with it or to get to touch it. So Amalei, the disgruntled Rav Chanan bar Rava said, Avin shachim matne shetus lebnei. Avin the fool is teaching his son foolishness. It shouldn't be that the Mishnah needed to tell us that you're allowed to cover excrement. Of course, you're allowed to cover the excrement because, my mistake. Not only are you allowed to carry the excrement, you'd be allowed to move the excrement because it's fit to feed to dogs. And since it's fit to feed to dogs, it's not muktzah. So why are you teaching him that you need to cover the excrement? You can move it. There's no problem. So what foolishness is that? And if you want to say that the reason why he was teaching this is because if it hadn't been, produced before Shabbos, then it could be considered nolad. It could be considered as to have been something whose origin and whose creation happened on Shabbos. And if its origin and creation happened on Shabbos, it means it wasn't prepared for usage before Shabbos, which means that it would be miksa. So then if that's the approach that you want to take, Vahatanya, but we have a Baraisa, Naharos HaMoshkin, Umaynos HaNovin, Harehen Karagli Kol Adam, that when it comes to water that's flowing in a river or gushing from a spring, so you could argue, hey, this water wasn't here before Shabbos, it arrived just now, so how are you allowed to draw it on Shabbos? So the fact that you're allowed to scoop up water from a river or scoop up water that is in a stream, you're allowed to do that. That wasn't prepared before Shabbos, so the same would apply to excrement that happens on Shabbos. So how should we learn this Mishnah then, if that's the case? Asked Rabbi Avin. We should be teaching this, that it means that you are allowed to cover up chicken poop on Shabbos if it's there to prevent a child from touching it and from getting dirty. But if that's the case, then the tepuk later have a graf shori. But then we could learn this out from the fact that we are allowed to remove chamber pots. And if you're allowed to remove chamber pots because of the disgusting content within, then we should be allowed to remove the chicken poop as well. So to that we say, and if you want to say that you're allowed to move the chamber pot because it's got things inside, that's why we're allowed to move it. But the actual excrement itself, we're not allowed to move. But hold on a minute. If you had a mouse that was found in your spices, like we saw with Rav Ashi, who found a mouse amongst his spices, and over there he said, grab it and chuck it out. So you are allowed to move a disgusting object and not have to worry just about covering it. So the Gemara then says, Ba'ashva, well, we're talking about a garbage dump. And since it's in a place where people are not really going to be bothered by it, therefore you wouldn't be allowed to move it. But now the Gemara asks, the katan ba'ashba my baile. What's a katan, what's a child got to do with a garbage dump? Why would he be there? Why would we say that we need to cover up this poo because of a child? He shouldn't be there anyway. So that's a bit of a strange thing to say. So the Gemara says, okay, fine, but we're talking about a courtyard. So if we're talking about a courtyard, the Gemara asks, Chatsanami graf shari. I just said that. I just said that if it's in a courtyard, then it would be like a chamber pot. It would be like this graf shari, and you should be allowed to move it. So the Gemara concludes, well, we're actually talking about a garbage dump that's in a person's courtyard where a child does go around. So you wouldn't be able to move the actual excrement necessarily because it is a garbage dump. But because you are concerned about a child, you would be allowed to cover it up. And that's how the Gemara concludes. Continuing with a quote from our Mishnah, V'al akrav, when it comes to a scorpion, shlotishak, in order that it should not sting or bite on Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, Kol mazikin neheragim b'Shabbos. You are allowed to kill all harmful creatures on Shabbos. Okay? Massive Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef raised a challenge to this. Chamisha neheragim b'Shabbos va'elehen. There are 5 creatures only that you are allowed to kill on Shabbos, and they are Zvuv shebe'eretz Mitzrayim, a poisonous fly from Egypt, the tzira shebeninveh, a wasp from Ninveh, va'akrav shebechadayav, an akrav that comes from a place called Chadayav, the nachash shebe'eretz Yisrael, a snake in Eretz Yisrael, the kelev shota b'chol makom, or a rabid dog in any place. Money. Who is this Mishnah? Who is this statement in accordance with? Ilema Rabbi Yehuda. If you say that it goes with the opinion of, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, but then he says that you are liable for doing a malacha that is not needed for its own sake, and therefore you're not allowed to kill these animals. So this can't be going like Rabbi Yehuda, because it says that there are 5 animals that you can kill. Elalav Rabbi Shimon. Rather, we have to say that this goes in accordance with Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon has said that you are allowed to do malacha. Just 1 second, please. I'm really sorry. Rabbi Shimon says that you're allowed to do malacha, not for the specific purpose of that which would have been forbidden on Shabbos, but for a different purpose you would be allowed. So therefore, if you want to say that this goes like Rabbi Shimon, Vahani disha shari acharina lo, then am I in the right place? So if that's the case, why is it only these ones that are okay to kill? Rabbi Shimon would say that anything would be allowed to kill. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, who's to even say that the way this Baraisa has been taught, the statement that 5 things can be killed on Shabbos, who's to say that it's even correct? Maybe this was a corrupt Dilma Mishabashtahi. Maybe it's a corrupted, erroneous Baraisa that one doesn't need to take into serious consideration. Because if we think about it for a moment, the way that Baraisas, Mishnahs, the way that this was all taught was by word of mouth. And yeah, there would have been rabbis that would have kept their own notebooks to be able to track which Baraisas, which teachings were legitimate, consistent, thorough, the logic was tight. But maybe this was one of the examples where it didn't get universally accepted. Amar Rav Yosef says, Ana masnisinla, v'osimnala. No, this was actually one that I've got in my records, that I've got in my notes, and not only that, but I had a question from it, and I have an answer for it. Baratsu acharav the divrei hakol. that when we're talking about animals that are running after you, so then yeah, if you're in real danger, then everyone agrees that you're allowed to kill them. But when it comes to these 5 specific examples, then we'd go like Rabbi Shimon, that you're allowed to kill those 5 specific examples, even if they're not chasing after you. And so that's how you ratify these 2 sources. Because on the one hand, we said originally, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, that anything can be killed on Shabbos. That's according to everyone if the animal is chasing after you. Then we said, but there's this challenge of Rav Yosef of the 5 animals that can be killed. That's even if they're not chasing after you. And that's how we ratify and explain the variance between these 2 sources. Tani Tama Kame de Rava bar Rav Huna. It was taught before Rava bar Rav Huna. Hahoreg nachashim va'kravim b'Shabbos ein roch hasidim nocha hemeni. That a person who kills snakes and scorpions on Shabbos, the spirits of the Hasidim, meaning these Hasidim, would not be that impressed if you were to do that. Amalei, but he said back to him, those on Hasidim ein roch hachavim nocha mehem. Those Hasidim, the spirit of the sages will not be pleased with them. Meaning, if you have got a situation of snakes and scorpions, you got to go and kill them. And just because these Hasidim might not be that impressed, it's still the right thing to do. Upliga de Rav Huna, but it would seem that Rava, the son of Rav Huna, disagrees with his father. Rav Huna chazi lahahu gavra katil zibura, because he once saw a person killing a wasp, a hornet. Amalei shlimtinu lekuru. Have you really done anything? Have you finished killing all the hornets? You've only killed the one. So this indicates that whereas Rav Huna was not impressed with this guy who killed a wasp, because what use is it killing just one? There's loads more. And yet the son of Rav Huna, Rava, clearly says that if you've got this situation of snakes and scorpions on Shabbos, then one needs to go and kill them. Tanu Rabbanan. Are we in the right place? No, we're not. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Baraisa, Nizdamnu lo nachashim va'akrabim hargan bi'adua shenizdamnu lo lahargan. If snakes or scorpions came upon him, they came upon him, doesn't say explicitly on Shabbos, hargan, then if you killed them, bi'adua shenizdamnu lo lahargan. If you went and killed them, it is clear that this whole episode happened in order that you should kill them, meaning that Hashem orchestrated it so that you should go and kill them. Lo hargan, if you did not kill them, if you did not kill them, then it is clear that this whole thing was orchestrated in order for them to kill you, but a miracle happened and you were saved. Ula said, and if you want, you can say it was Rabba bar Rav Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, ben Nishufin Bo, that they said that this refers to when they are hissing at you, where they are scary, but not necessarily actually trying to do anything. So in that kind of example, in that kind of instance, that would be an indication that that a miracle was being performed, and this creature did not attack you and did not kill you. Amar Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. There was one time when a creature, a snake, fell into the Beis HaMedrash, the Torah, the study hall. Va'amad niyusi echad v'hargu, and somebody got up. It says here Nabatean, from someone from a particular area. So this student got up and he killed the snake. Amar Rebbe said, Pagabo kayotzebo, one of its type killed it, meaning this snake has met its match. So they asked the question, when he said this, Pagabo kayotzebo, when Rebbe said he's met his match, he's met one of its type, the Shapir Avid or lo? Did he mean this in a good way? Or did he mean this in a bad way? Did he mean that it was appropriate that the guy went and killed him, or did he not mean this? Tashma, come in here, the Rabbi Abba Berei, the Rabbi Chia bar Abba, that there was Rabbi Abba, the son of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, and Rabbi Zera, Havu Yasve, Akila Devei de Rabbi Yanai. They were sitting when they were visiting Rabbi Yanai. Nafak milsa mibenaihu. And this topic came up in conversation. Bo minei Rabbi Yanai. They asked Rabbi Yanai, Mahu laharad nachashim va'akrabim b'Shabbos. Are you allowed to kill snakes and scorpions on Shabbos? Amar lahu, he said, Sirani horeg, I would kill a wasp. Nachash va'akrab l'kol shekain. And all the more so, I would kill a snake or scorpion. Dilma lafi tumo. Maybe they were wondering, maybe this is not a conclusive proof. Maybe he means that he would just, by the by, incidentally, just trample on it innocently. And maybe that's not enough of a proof that you're allowed to kill these things. Maybe he was saying, listen, if I accidentally stepped on one, I wouldn't get all that worried. But maybe they wonder, maybe it means that you can't actively go and try and kill one of these things. The Amar Rav Yehuda rock dorsal afitama, because Rav Yehuda says that you'd be allowed to walk on spit that had fallen on the floor innocently. You wouldn't necessarily have to try and consciously avoid such situations, even though with regard to spit on the floor, if a person was to walk over it, it could smooth over that bit of floor, which is a problem on Shabbos. We're not worried about such. Things. If you are walking and you accidentally step on it, or by this extension, you accidentally step on a snake or a scorpion or a wasp, so there's nothing doing, but it's not necessarily proof that you're allowed to kill these things. Rav Sheshes says that you can walk on a snake, by the by. And Rav Katina says that a scorpion you can trample on innocently. So what it seems from here is that there's not necessarily explicit proof that you can go out of your way to kill these things, but if it happened, okay, then it's nothing to lose sleep about. Abba Bar Marta Dahu Abba Bar Minyume. Abba Bar Marta, who was the same person as Abba Bar Minyume, have a maski bay devei reish gelusa zuze. He owed money to the exilarch, to the head of the community. So he owed money to them. I see you who ka mitzara le. They brought him to the exilarch so that they could torment him and force him to pay. Hava shadi ruka. At the time that he was there happened to be some split on the floor, and he observed the Reish Galusa say as follows: Amalahu Reish Galusa, the exilarch said, Aisu ma'ana sechifu alavei. Go and bring a vessel to cover this spit on the floor. Amalahu, so this guy, Abba Bar Marsa, he said to the exilarch, Lo sariftu, you don't need to cover it. Hachi Amar Rabbi Yehuda, rock dorsal afituma, that you can walk over this without having to worry. Amalahu, so the exilarch said, Subur Mirabananhu, this guy must be one of the Torah scholars, Shavkuhu, so let's leave him alone. Let's not go too crazy on the fact that he owes him money. But the point is that we're bringing evidence that spit and snakes and scorpions and all these types of things, one does not need to worry about stepping on them in the natural course of events. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana said, in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Promotos shall base Rebbe mutal taltalan b'Shabbos. When it comes to the candlesticks of the house of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi of Rebbe, you are allowed to handle these things on Shabbos. Amalei Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera says, "B'nitalin b'yadar achas or b'shtei yadayim." Are we talking about candlesticks that are small and can be moved with one hand, or are we talking about big, heavy candlesticks that can only be moved with two hands? That's the question that Rabbi Zera asked. Turning to the top of the next Amud, Amaleka Osan Shobe Savich. He said back to him, we are talking about the types of candlesticks that you would find in your house. Interestingly, I have a note there to say that we're talking about large ones, but in my notes, I have it as saying that we're talking about small ones, because he was not particularly wealthy, and so we were saying that we're talking about small ones you'd be allowed to move, but not big ones because they'd be too big and heavy. So I'm not sure what to do with that one, because they're quoting Tosfot over here, who says that we're referring to large ones. Okay. V'amar Rabbi Abba, another statement by Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Karonos Shabbos Rebbe Mutar L'Talton B'Shabbos. The wagons of the house of Rebbe would be allowed to move on Shabbos. Amalei Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera said, "B'netalim ba'adam echad or b'shnei b'nei adam." Are we talking about wagons that can be handled by one person, or are we talking about wagons that can be handled by two people? Amalei ka'osan shel beis avich. We're talking about those that you would find in your father's house, which would be small, again, because he's not particularly wealthy. Va'amar Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, hitir lahem Rabbi Chanina, lebeis Rebbe, l'shtos yayin b'karonas shel nachri. Rav Abba Bar Kahana permitted Rabbi Chanina, one second, let's just scroll down a little bit. Rabbi Kahana said, Rabbi Chanina permitted the members of Rabbi Yehuda's household to drink wine in the wagons of non-Jewish people, b'chosam echad, if they only had one seal. Now this is a matter of dispute in Shas as to whether you are allowed to drink wine made by or belonging to a non-Jew with one seal, or whether you have to have two seals. So it seems that Rabbi Chanina permitted the household of Rebbe to drink wine belonging to a non-Jew if it had one seal on. And he wasn't sure if this was because he held like Rabbi Eliezer, who says that you only need one protective seal around non-Jewish wine before you're allowed to drink it, or whether it's because the non-Jewish people would be so afraid of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, of the prince, and therefore they'd be too afraid to ever tinker and create problems for this wine, and that is why Rabbi Chanina was allowing them to drink it. So that's all for today, ladies and gentlemen. We will pick it up again next week, and we will wish you all a meaningful and wonderful week ahead. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.